All aboard!
Hey, welcome to the Tigers Halftime Breakdown Podcast. We're here to talk about great Auburn sports and most of all, great football. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Tigers Halftime Breakdown Podcast. My name is David Kashmer. I'm your podcast co-host along with Tom Dunnam. Tom, big week in sports this week.
Yes, sir. You know, we had a tough loss against Vanderbilt this past weekend, but also we got a big Thursday night football game and an AFC North matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens.
It's a big week in sports, and on this episode, we're going to talk all about Auburn's recent loss to Vandy and the impact on bowl eligibility. We're going to preview Auburn's next game against the University of Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. We're going to talk about key NFL Week 10 matchups and their playoff implications. We're even going to do the fantasy tips that we normally do, and we're going to talk about some sit or starts, some waiver wire pickups, and we're even going to talk just a little bit about the Auburn basketball season. So with that, Tom, what are your thoughts about this tough loss to Vanderbilt?
But, you know, last week's episode, I predicted a 38-31 win. I thought we had kind of finally found our footing offensively, you know, and feeding Jarquez. I figured we would keep doing that. I think he ran the ball 12 times last game, if I'm not mistaken. The offense struggled big time. You know, we only scored 7 points. Vanderbilt got a late touchdown in the fourth that just kind of killed any chance we had. Per the usual, we would drive the ball a little bit and just stall out. Missed field goals kill us. Of course, we're down to 3-6 overall now, 1-5 in SEC play. The chances of making a bowl game look very, very bleak. We got 3 games left, and we have to win all 3 to make a bowl game. And those 2 of those 3 are pretty daunting, playing A&M and Bama.
I'll tell you, one of the few plays that I saw, I was also at halftime helping and working, but one of the plays I saw was that impressive yards after catch run for our lone touchdown, and that made me very hopeful. But as you said, Pavia is just so strong, and he's really had...
Come on down to halftime. If you haven't been in there before, let me tell you, it's all about great sports. Sports every day, sports all year round, Auburn sports, professional sports, you name it. If it's great sports, it's halftime. Come on down and be there.
You freeze his number every time they've seen each other in play. And like you said, 3-6 overall for Auburn now. Going to be really tough to get into a bowl game. This was a tough one against the Commodores. And like you said, for a fan like yourself and myself, this has made bowl eligibility difficult. Let's preview that ULM matchup coming up. What are your thoughts on this next game, and how's it going to look for the Tigers?
Well, I memean, this should be a very winnable game, but as this season has proved, nothing is too winnable here in Auburn. ULM sits at 5-3 overall, 3-2 in conference play in the Sun Belt. They're coming off a 28-23 loss to Marshall. I'm not sure who they have this weekend. I didn't look. They may be on a bye just like us. But let's see. I know they're running back Ahmad Hardy. He's rushed for over 800 yards this season. He's pairing that up with 7 touchdowns and averaging almost 6 yards a carry. So he's not too far behind Jarquez Hunter in that yards per carry. Of course, it's different competition, but their defense, from the stat that I looked up, is allowing almost 200 rushing yards a game and right at 183, 184. So once again, I'm going to reiterate, just like before the Vanderbilt game, we should feed Jarquez, but we seem to just have a hard time wanting to do that calling plays. Their quarterback has only thrown for about 800 yards this year, so with our pass defense that's been pretty electric with all the young guys starting, we should be okay in that facet.
Well, like you said, Aiden Armenta has thrown for about 800 yards, 7 touchdowns this season, and ULM has a 4th-ranked defense in the Sun Belt. On average, like you said, that's about 24.3 points per game. And this just couldn't be more important for Auburn's postseason aspirations, like you said. I think it's a very winnable game, like you said. I think to keep the bowl hopes alive and to keep the machine running. This is a big week for Auburn. So I'm going to watch it just like you are, just like we all are. And I think, as you said, this is a very winnable game and absolutely essential to have really any shot at to get the bowl berth this year. So with that, let's talk about the Thursday night football preview of the big game we were talking about. Bengals Ravens. The matchup is a big one. We've all seen Lamar Jackson this season and one of the league's best 6-3 record for Lamar and Derrick Henry and the offense. How do you think this matchup is going to be versus the Bengals?
Well, from what I've looked at statistically, the Chiefs have bottom half defense in both rushing defense and passing defense. Of course, we know Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry have combined to make one of the best, or actually the best, change my words there, the best offense in the NFL. I mean, Lamar's throwing for, I think it's 266 a game. He's got 20 touchdowns. He's also pairing that up with 500 rushing yards as a quarterback. Derrick Henry's ran for, I think it's 1,112 touchdowns. Pretty tough for that Chiefs defense that's just not been very good so far.
Well, now I noticed you and I both have the Bucks Chiefs on the brain. We saw that matchup last night, and obviously as a Bucks fan, you were giving me a little hard time about it before we came on. So before we go on with the Bengals Ravens matchup, you and I both have it on our mind. Any thoughts on that difficult loss for the Buccaneers and those undefeated Chiefs? I mean, what a year so far.
All I can say is they should have went for 2 at the end of regulation and just went ahead and tried to put it away, you know. Either you're going to beat the undefeated team, the monster, the 2-time defending champs, or you're going to lose.
Well, sure enough, Baker and the boys did come away with a loss. A surprisingly close game, given that they're 1, 2, and 3 receiver positions, top 3 out of the game to injury. Just an amazing performance, I think, by the Bucks in their run game. So as a Bucks fan, I got to tell you, I wasn't unsatisfied with their performance. That was a tough one, especially on the road.
No, I'm driven all around this great country, mostly on a bus. Let me tell you, one of the things you can see from the bus is one of the best sports bars I've seen, and that's Halftime in Auburn, Alabama. You get there, you get great food, you get great drink specials, and great people. It's just a good place to be, whether you're watching a game or hanging out with friends. So listen, you should come on down and try Halftime, just like this podcast is just a great place to be.
Very, very gutsy performance. And like you said, missing their 1, 2, and 3 receivers, you couldn't really ask for much more out of that.
No. Well, back to the Bengals Ravens. I know we're bouncing around, but I don't want to get away from that Thursday night preview just too quickly. And the reason why is I think there's a lot more to it with Joe Burrow, who I think has been just not having the worst year, but just the Bengals just have not had it translate into the win-loss column. Burrow's thrown for about 2,000 plus yards, 2,300 or so, 20 touchdowns, and just a really not the worst season by any means, but just the win-loss column hasn't shown it for the Bengals.
The defense has really killed them, man. It's, you know, like I said, they're bottom half in both rushing defense and passing defense, and that's kind of been what's killed them. You know, they put up a lot of points in a lot of games, but they've given up a lot too.
Well, Cincinnati ranks in the bottom half of the league defensively, and Baltimore's offense has just been unstoppable. So, Tom, what's your prediction for this Thursday night matchup? I think I know where you're going with it.
Well, you know, I like the sports gambling a little bit. So the Ravens are a 6.5 point favorite. In the NFL, it's tough to say, you know, if a team's going to cover or not, because the NFL actually it's one of those things I don't touch a whole lot pregame. I do bet live in it, but the AFC North is a very brutal and physical division. I think the game will be a lot closer than people expect. I do expect to see a lot of points put up, but I think ultimately Baltimore's going to pull it out, maybe by a touchdown, maybe 10 points.
All right. Well, with that, let's talk about the NFL Week 10 matchups in general. We got the game in Germany again. That's the Giants-Panthers. Giants 2-7, Panthers 2-7. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm a Panthers fan, you know, so I want to be optimistic, but it's pretty much a battle of 2 of the worst teams in the league. Daniel Jones has more experience than Bryce Young. I think he's a little bit better than Bryce Young. I don't know if that's saying much, but I think we take an L to the Giants in Germany.
All right. Let's look at the Bills Colts, we got a strong Bills team this year again, 7-2, led by Josh Allen, of course. And then on the other side of the ball, you got the timeless one, Joe Flacco. That's the 4-5 Colts backup quarterback, obviously for years with the Ravens and now back in the saddle. What do you think about the thoughts for the Bills Colts game?
You know, I love Joe Flacco. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks growing up, but Father Time catches up with everybody. It just so happens to be the Colts' best option right now since, Anthony Richardson doesn't really like practice that much. But I like the Bills big.
All right. Then we have Russell Wilson this year back in the saddle after years with Seattle and then a stint in Denver that was a tough one. But now leading the Steelers at 6-2, facing off against the Commanders. And they have Jaden Daniels on the other side of the ball. So what are your thoughts on the Steelers-Commanders matchup?
I think this game will be extremely close, but I like Jaden Daniels. I like the Commanders. They put up a lot of points. The dude is an absolute phenom and a sensation. I like the Commanders in an extremely close one at home.
All right. Well, let's wrap up the rest of the league real quickly. Then we'll get to fantasy. I know there's one you want to talk about with Bo Nix. I know you want to talk about Bo and the Broncos this year versus those undefeated Chiefs. How do you think Bo's going to fare taking on Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense under Andy Reid is just so tough every year?
Well, Bo, he's had some really good moments this year. He's also had some bad moments, which is expected with a rookie. But I kind of think the Chiefs just do what they do, and that's win.
They sure do. I mean, tough game to watch again for me as a Bucs fan last night. But, Andy Reid has a very quarterback favorable offense design. You see it all the time with the screen passes and the short routes, and you just see the quarterback ratings. Of course, Mahomes is just such a talented quarterback to begin with. You got the league rules where you can't get within 10 feet of the guys before you get called for something. You put all that together, and it is just tough to overcome the Chiefs offense. So I agree with you. I think it's another Chiefs win and another piece of progress to an undefeated season. So like you said, that would be the first undefeated season since those 72 Dolphins. Of course, we had the Patriots come close fairly recently. I agree with you. That's another Chiefs win. All right. So Fantasy Football Corner, let's talk briefly about some waiver wire recommendation and some start and sits. Who should we be looking for on the waiver wires this week as we look to staff up our teams, Tom?
I would pick up Khalil Herbert, running back from the Chicago Bears. He's going to get an increased usage due to injuries in the backfield, makes him a very valuable addition. I'd also pick up Russell Wilson. I think the stat I saw was like 17% of fantasy owners have him right now. He's getting back into his groove. He's kind of looking more like the Russell Wilson from the Seahawks than the Broncos version since coming back from injury. So that'd be my two pickups.
Well, I'll handle some of the starts and sits. I've got a good start. I think the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold, that's a tough matchup against the Jaguars defense, but I would start Sam in that. And I think that the Jaguars defense is just what it is this year. They're allowing the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this season. So I'd expect a strong performance for whoever the Vikings start at quarterback this week. So, and Tom, who should we be sitting this week?
I'd sit Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going to face a tough matchup against the Jets. Sauce Gardner's probably going to be the one covering him, one of the best D-backs in the league. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a big boomer bust guy this year, and going up against Sauce is going to be an extremely tough task.
You want to talk about your best commentary for pro and collegiate sports, particularly Auburn? You found the right place. This is the Tigers Halftime Breakdown. You come here when you want to know all about fantasy sports, who to start this week, who to sit, and what to do as you promote your great football team. Now let's get to it. Get to the podcast.
Yeah. Well, and then on to the injury updates. We have Dak, obviously. Prescott's been hurt and is going to be out now for several weeks with that hamstring injury. Who else around the league do you think we're going to just have to make sure we sit, don't play, et cetera, this week because of the injuries?
Well, Chris Olave, of course, I think you were here actually when he took that hit against the Panthers on Sunday. Pretty nasty hit. He's in concussion protocol for the week. So I don't even think he'll play.
Well, with that, We got a lot of choices to make this week with our fantasy teams. And it looks like you said, Tom, there's just a lot going on in the league for the storylines this week. So with that, let's just recap briefly as we wind up. A couple key remarks, I think. And one of those, again, is just about how strong the league is this year, and particularly that Thursday night matchup. And then, Tom, your comments on them versus Auburn, just a must win, like you said. Any other main takeaways from the weekend sports coming up?
I mean, not really. Just kind of reiterate, Auburn needs to feed Jarquez Hunter.
I hear you. I think setting up that run game to open it up for the passes, it's just how you do it, especially with a talented guy. Now, of course, it's so easy for us to say, and it's not so easy to do. But like you said, there's a lot of talent in running the ball, and that sure would help open things up for those passing lanes. Let's let you know for our next episode, we're going to be talking football like we have. We're going to be bringing on some high-level female athletes, and we're going to change things up just a little bit. So do look forward to it. In an upcoming episode, we're going to have some high-level, world-class level, previous female athletes, gymnasts who are going to come on. Tom and I are excited to talk to them. Tom, I learned so much about women's gymnastics, just how tough it is as we were talking to some of them. It's just not something I know much about otherwise. How about you?
Oh, same here. I don't know anything about it. I tried to follow it a little bit when we had Cindy Lee, the Olympic gold medalist here at Auburn, but it's still just not something I'm very familiar with, so I'm excited to get to know more about it.
So with that, guys, check us out on halftime.auburn.com. You can go there to see the latest thoughts on pre-game reviews and post-game analyses from Tom, myself, and our colleagues, of course, that host the podcast, which you'll be able to find soon enough on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, among others, including Spotify. So Tom and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And with that, War Eagle.
War Eagle. One last thing, David, I'd like to mention. Bruce Pearl and the boys tipping off basketball this week. We got two big games. We play Vermont on Wednesday, who has made the past 3 NCAA tournaments. And then we play Houston on Saturday in Houston at the Toyota Center, home of the Houston Rockets, where Houston is a top 5 team in the country. Kelvin Sampson, one of the best coaches in the country. And it's going to be a top 15 matchup overall. Should be a dandy at 8:30 on Saturday night. Watch it here at halftime.
Till next time, we'll see you all later.
War Eagle.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us on the Tigers Halftime Breakdown. We really appreciate your time today. We look forward to having you as a guest next time. We look forward to having you as a listener. You have a great day, and we'll see you soon next time on the show.